Have you ever trained for a marathon and wondered what's the most efficient way to fuel yourself for the race? Well, I have. A couple of weeks ago, I took part in a trail marathon with over 5,100 feet of elevation, and I won it. Well, I finished alongside two of the guys with only 183 participants. However, in this video, I'm going to share with you my complete nutritional guide, of which helped me to achieve just that. Caveat, I want to be transparent and state that I'm not a qualified nutritionist. However, I am a keen marathon runner with plenty of experience now and has made many mistakes in my time. So I'm looking to provide you with some information to ensure that you don't have to do the same. Through this video, I'm going to be explaining everything in chronological order from training all the way along to race day nutrition. Before I get into anything, it is incredibly important that whatever you're consuming on race day or during the race, you need to have tried all of these supplements, all of your nutrition beforehand during your training. Why? It's incredibly important to find out what works for you, because if I'm telling you everything that I did, you might have some sort of issue digesting what might work well for me and vice versa. So it's incredibly important, again, to try and find some sort of method so that you're, not feeling uncomfortable when you run, and ultimately you can perform to the best of your abilities on race day. The first thing that I did to ensure that I have as much energy as possible on race day is to carbohydrate load, or carb loading. Why do I do it, and ultimately what is it? So our body always burns two energy sources, where the more explosive movement that you're doing, sprinting or powerlifting, something that requires more fast twitch muscle fibers, you'll be burning predominantly carbohydrates. And on the other side of that is fat, where it'll be a little bit more of a sustainable energy source. Now, carb loading is to essentially top up on what's called our glycogen stores, which is ultimately providing us with as much energy as possible. And if done correctly, you can burn up to 2,500 calories of pure carbohydrates when you race. Over a marathon, we'll be burning predominantly carbohydrates, even though we will be burning some fats also. So if we can focus on carbohydrates, because this is ultimately going to give us the best performance, because we can run at a little bit more of a faster, more explosive pace than we would do if we were on just a ketogenic diet, for example. Personally, I like to carb load for 72 hours or 3 days before the race day. Some people like to do it 24 to 48 hours. Again, I'm just explaining what I did, and that's personally what I like to do. You don't need to have a low carb diet before a carb load. This isn't going to spike your insulin levels or anything like this. You just need to simply eat more carbohydrates over the course of those 3 days and put it into a metric of which we can measure. I would have 4 to 5 grams of carbohydrate per pound of body weight. So I weighed around 150 pounds. I times that by 4, which will give me 600 to 750 pounds, between 4 to 5 grams. So within that margin is where I want to be eating every day for the 3 days before the race. And what carbohydrates do, they increase our capacity to hold on to more bodily fluids, i.e. water. Ultimately, carbohydrates can hydrate us as well as giving us some quick releasing energy source. A lot of people, and myself included, I feel way more thirsty on a carb load, but one of the biggest mistakes that I've done in the past, and one of which I can't state enough the importance of this to prevent cramps later on in your race. With that uptake in feeling thirsty, obviously you're going to be drinking more water, but it's incredibly important to consume with electrolytes, which is sodium, potassium and magnesium, whilst drinking these water. Why? Because when you're drinking more water, you can actually wash out the electrolytes, which prevent you from cramping. So sodium salt is a way to hold on to bodily fluids, i.e. water. Don't be surprised if your body weight increases. My body weight increased by about 2 to 3 kilograms, I believe, over the course of 3 days. Now, I'm not gaining fat, I'm not putting on muscle, I'm simply just increasing the amount of water my body's holding from increasing the amount of carbohydrates and also consuming more water and consuming electrolytes. I also have creatine around 5 grams daily. That is just my own personal preference. The only marathon I've ever ran without creatine was the London Marathon, of which I did last year in 2 hours 43 minutes. Now, I was trying to run sub 2:35. I was on pace for sub 2:35 all the way up to around kilometer 32. What happened towards the latter stages of the race, I was cramping significantly. I don't know if this has anything directly to do with creatine. Now, what is creatine again? It increases our capacity to hold onto more bodily fluids. So I wonder if that hiccup in the London Marathon would have been down to coming off creatine, because I came off it around 2 weeks before the race. My body weight decreased, which ultimately meant that I was probably holding on to less water. So when I ran, perhaps I couldn't stay at that pace because I didn't have the hydration towards the latter stages of the run. In this race, I had creatine. It doesn't work for everyone, but it is the most researched supplement for any sort of physical endeavor, and it's typically associated with powerlifting, bodybuilding, weightlifting, because it can give you up to 3% increased strength. So if you're bodybuilding, you could put on more muscle mass. If you're powerlifting or weightlifting, you can lift more weight. I personally am a hybrid athlete. Sounds a little bit pretentious to say that, but what that essentially is I'm competing in two different disciplines simultaneously. Although I haven't competed in powerlifting yet, it is something that I would like to do in the future. So I powerlift and run, which is why I have creatine. I wouldn't recommend taking creatine on the week of your race. If you're already on creatine, just continue to take the creatine. That's my personal advice, because again, when I ran the London Marathon, I stopped taking creatine, my body weight decreased, and then I was getting cramps towards the latter stages of the run. So it could be a few reasons, but that was the only difference that I made from my personal best in Paris, which was a year before. I was on creatine for that run. I did the same carb load as I did in London. However, I came off creatine and I cramped in London. I was running at a faster pace, so that could be another reason. But also, it's possible that it was because I came off creatine. Now, the reason why I did that was a little bit of stupidness. I won't explain too much, but essentially I wanted to decrease my body weight, thinking that decreasing my body weight means that my body doesn't need to have as much oxygen going around my bloodstream. So I was thinking my VO2 max would improve and ultimately my cardio would improve, but it didn't really work out for me. And I think when you're trying to change your body weight or do anything drastically weeks before the race, it's just a bad idea. Now, one thing I did do, obviously, when you're running a marathon, you should be in a taper phase, meaning that your training or the volume of your training has come down. The intensity can still be somewhat the same, but the week of the race, ideally decreasing your volume and intensity to ensure that your body is physically repaired and ultimately you can perform to the best of your ability when you race. So obviously, one of the best ways to recover is sleep. So if you're eating a huge carbohydrate dinner on the evening, you may struggle to sleep. I'm sure you can relate to if you've had a huge bowl of pasta or lasagna or something, and then you go into sleep and you feel like you've got a family of 6, just accumulating in your mid. What I tend to do is I'll eat my biggest meals towards the start of the day, slowly decrease, perhaps lunch I might have a larger meal also, but then the evening is my smallest meal. What I typically just have a bowl of pasta, olive oil, parmesan. So consuming carbohydrates more in the morning and less at night can increase the quality of our sleep and ultimately improve recovery. Race day morning and breakfast. Contrary to popular belief, the breakfast isn't actually as important as you think it would be. Ideally, over the carb load, I've built up my glycogen stores and the amount of carbohydrates that my body's holding on to, so I have enough energy as it is. But the breakfast is simply just to get myself a little bit of carbohydrates, a little bit of fat, to ultimately make me feel comfortable, get my mind ready. So I eat the same thing on race day as I would always eat before every long run, so that my race day feels a little bit more relaxed. It feels more like a normal long run. So what I did for the day of the race, my race started at 9 a.m. I wanted to get there for around 8:15 in the morning, so 45 minutes before the race started, to give me enough time to check in and just kind of relax before the race, go to the toilet if I needed to. It's only a half an hour drive from me, so say I had to leave at 7:45 in the morning, I'd get up at 6 a.m. So when I was up at 6, straight away I went to make myself some breakfast. I'd have 2 bagels, peanut butter, honey and banana, a typical runner's staple breakfast. I would also have a black coffee, helps me go to the toilet with the antioxidants. I would have all my normal daily supplements. I'll put a list of those on screen for you right now. high-tech stuff. And with my water, I'd have in the morning my normal daily greens, creatine here. Again, I'm not saying you should have creatine on the day of the race if you're not used to having it, but I would continue to have it because that was what I was already having. A hydro tab, which here from oiiii. oiiii is not a sponsor of mine, but it's just a supplement group that works well. It doesn't upset my stomach. It's made by triathletes, so these are the type of people that I trust to give me some sort of nutritional information. I would also have this, also by oiiii, again, not sponsor, oiiii, perhaps get in my DMs. This is a super carbs powder. It has 80 grams of carbohydrates per serving. Now I think it's around 3 to 4 scoops, gives you 80 grams. So I'd have this on race day morning alongside my hydro tab, my creatine, my daily greens. As you can imagine, it's a pretty intense concoction to be drinking at 6 a.m. in the morning. The other supplement I would have, Precision Hydration Sweat Salt. I'll just have one of these. So imagine you're sweating. What you're actually doing when you're sweating, you might taste salty, is you're doing just that. The electrolytes that you lose in sweat, we're going to be replacing those so that we're not going to be cramping towards the latter stages of the run. I would supplement with these during the run, but I'll get into that shortly. So again, the day of the race, 2 bagels, I didn't eat both of them, peanut butter, banana, honey, a black coffee, and then on my other drink I had a mad concoction of creatine, the oiiii hydro tab, the oiiii 80 gram of super carbs, and my daily greens. I'd have all my daily supplements. I'd also have an antihistamine because I get a lot of hay fever. I was running a trail marathon and I didn't want to be finishing the race looking like I'd done the full distance with Mike Tyson. That did happen once, that I was playing hide and seek in a field with my friends and I came back home and my dad was asking me who beat me up, which is nice to know that my dad knew his son was hard as nails. And within half an hour, my face had gone back down. I was like, look dad, I'm not a pussy. Once I'd been to the toilet a few times, potentially 3 times in race day morning, which might sound absolutely absurd. Now, you imagine if you've not carb loaded before, you're having 4 to 5 grams of carbohydrates for 3 days. You kind of want to go to the toilet, and especially after having a coffee which has antioxidants, which, you know, makes your digestive tract go like, fuck it, you know what I mean, drop everything. But once I'd gone to the toilet and I feel like I'd gotten everything out, incredible bro science here, I would have 2 Imodiums. Now, you might say, Imodium, mate, it's like a diarrhea tablet. Why do I have Imodium? It prevents me from going to the when I'm racing. If any of you have run, sometimes it makes you want to go to the toilet. I'm sure you'll be aware of that. So having 2 of those little suckers makes me feel comfortable. What am I supplementing with on the actual run? Perhaps one of the most important things. The first thing, water. I was having this big pouch right here that fits in my rucksack. In that, I would have a hydro tab and some more of that 80 gram super carbs from oiiii. I'd filled it up. Note though, it is a little bit heavier to, as you imagine, fill up your backpack with water. You can get waters that you can fit in the side that wouldn't weigh as much, but you may have to fill the waters up at an aid station or a checkpoint later in the run. With that, I did not have to fill it once. I had water for the whole race. It has a little bit of a straw here, so that can come around and I can dirty alongside the water. Another oiiii supplement. Everyone that's watching this video is going to be like, oiiii are the one, and they kind of are. Now, because I'm not sponsored by them, SIS, also a very good company. I find that these 2 companies, they don't upset my stomach when I'm having oiiii or SIS gels. I've had goo gels before. They make my stomach on a bit of a mad one, a bit of a wobbler still. These are the oiiii super gels. Now, 40 gram of carbohydrates, every single one of these little pouches. They're incredibly sweet. It's essentially pure sugar, but it gives you a good energy hit. The way I explain it is like when you watch Fast and Furious and Paul Walker applies NOS and his body goes up. This. I have one of these every 40 minutes with a sweat salt that I mentioned earlier, just to ensure that when I'm sweating, I'm replacing the electrolytes that I'm losing through my sweat. I'm having one of those with these every 40 minutes and sip of that water that I have in my bag. Now, I would have some water throughout the run, potentially more than every 40 minutes, just to keep myself topped up. However, Towards the end of the run, I don't have any of them on me here, but another oiiii product, not this one, I would consume some caffeinated energy gels. Now, they don't have as much carbohydrates as that super gel. However, what they do have is obviously caffeine. As you're going through the run, you're starting to hurt, your legs are getting heavy, you're going, I don't know if I can do this. Have some caffeine. If I have caffeine, that feel-good feeling will naturally enable me to have positive thoughts. If you've ever done some sort of strenuous workout, if you feel good, you'll tend to perform much better than if you're instantly from the get-go doubting yourself, you don't really want to be there. But if everything wants to be where you are and you feel good, you'll perform to the best of your ability. Positive thoughts, ladies and gentlemen. And one of the ways you can do that, and what I did, I have caffeine towards the end. So 4, I was going to say 3, but 4 supplements I have during the run. Again, the water in my backpack, the oiiii super gel every 40 minutes, and on that 40-minute transition, I will start to have caffeine. I had 2 of them towards the end of the run. And then as well, the sweat salts. Towards the end of this run, I was cramping a little bit, so a couple of times I had a couple of sweat salts, so I packed more in my bag than I needed. And the 5th and final thing that I was eating on race day, I ate at the last 2 checkpoints, which was at 19.2 miles and 23.4 miles. I had a little bit of banana, pineapple, and some salted peanuts. So I'd have these as I was doing the race, just as I was getting into the dying ends of it, and I felt like I needed to top my nutrition up a little bit, because the last stages of the race that I ran, there was a lot of elevation, and as we were approaching the summits towards the end, I knew the last 3 miles or so were going to be absolutely disgusting. So I thought I might need a little bit more nutrition, a little bit more food, a little bit more food and fuel for the last stages of the run. Now, the very last section, I did say in this video I was going to be transparent and tell you what I did, so I will do just that. However, what I did wasn't necessarily the best thing to do to recover to the best of your ability. Now, when I was in Paris and I ran my PB, I did that with less than 2 years of running experience. I managed to achieve that, which, as you can imagine, I was incredibly proud of. And I was on such a feel-good factor that I actually got blackout drunk. I do not recommend that, ladies and gentlemen, chicks and chaps. What I do recommend is, again, not typically what I did on this one either. I had a beer and I had a load of bread. I think I had like a pizza and whatever. It's not going to enable me to recover to the best of my abilities. However, I like to treat myself after, if you like, I've done a training period and I've carb load and I've dealt with the stress. I like to have a little bit of pleasure after I run as a bit of a reward, but I will explain perhaps the things, if you're a little bit more disciplined than I am, what you should be eating to improve your recovery and speeding up that process a little bit. We don't really want to have any fiber over the course of a carb load, but you do want to have fiber after you run. Typically, these sort of things are colourful foods, generally beetroot, carrot, any sort of berries. All these foods are going to help you to recover alongside a lot of protein. So you could have, I don't know, protein shake, eggs, also got fats in them, these sort of things. But again, it's a little bit boring, isn't it? So there we go, the end of the video. Subscribe if you haven't already, and thank you very much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Peace.